This is The History of Cars by Nicholas Assermano
and Chris Noswitz.
According to statistics, the U.S. is the #1 nation in terms of privately owned cars. But how did we come to this point? How did it all start? Well, it all started in 18th century France.
Most people think that the first automobile was the Ford Model T. This is a common misconception. The first car was produced in France in 1789 by engineer Nicolas Joseph Cugnot. This was the first self-propelled vehicle. It was a heavy 3-wheeled steam-powered carriage with the boiler projecting the front.
Around 1885, German engineer Gottlieb Daimler continued to improve on Cugnot's design by building an improved internal combustion engine. The Stanley brothers, the most well-known American manufacturers of steam-driven automobiles, produced their Stanley steamers from 1897 until after World War I.
In 1903, Henry Ford incorporated the Ford Motor Company. In October 1908, he built a car for the Great Multitude, offering the Model T for $950. This car was produced over the next 19 years.
Nearly 15,500,000 Model Ts were sold in the U.S. alone. The Model T heralded the beginning of the motor age. The car evolved from a luxury item for the well-to-do to essentials transportation for the ordinary man.
General Motors, Ford's main competitor, became the world's largest automobile manufacturer in the 1920s.
In the 1930s, flashing turn signals were introduced, and the first air conditioning system was added to automobiles.
In the 1940s, Karl Pabst designed the Jeep used in World War II.
1950s cars were some of the most classic, powerful, and unsafe cars ever driven. The auto industry was starting to experiment with a new concept called a sports car, giving birth to the Corvette. During this time, cruise control was also created.
1960s muscle cars were a product of the classic car era. After World War II, Americans wanted bigger and faster cars. Their powerful V8 engine was designed for maximum acceleration on the street or in drag racing competitions.
In terms of safety, cars were regulated to become much safer beginning in the late 60s to early 70s. In 1968, the law requiring seatbelts for all motor vehicles was passed, excluding buses. Then, in the 70s, airbags began to be introduced into cars, preventing serious driver injuries. U.S. leadership in the field continued until the 1970s, when American manufacturers were challenged by the growing sales of Japanese and German cars.
During the 1970s and 80s, due to the increasing amount of people who purchased and used automobiles, along with the inflation of currency, the price of gasoline increased exponentially. In 1985, the ABS, or the automatic braking system, was developed to ensure a different type of brake that did not reflect the feeling of an emergency brake. They did this by releasing pressure in the tires to create a feeling that doesn't lock up when the wheels are in motion.
Starting with the Energy Policy Act of 1992, car manufacturers were encouraged to be more efficient, both in terms of fuel consumption and production techniques. To this day, companies are experimenting with various methods of powering a car, such as the electricity-powered Tesla.